So yesterday, the House of Representatives in D.C. passed their version of the American Health Care Act, America's Health Care Act.
Okay.
Something AHCA. How about that? Let's just go with the acronym. And now it moves over to the Senate, and the Senate has said they're actually writing their own, which just sets us up for a lot of time for reconciliation. Emphasis on the rec. Joining us on the phone, Senator John Kennedy. I would imagine you at least will play some role in what comes out of the Senate. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. But can I say one thing before we talk about health care?
You may.
The Louisiana House of Representatives yesterday passed a budget without raising any more taxes like the governor wanted that didn't increase the budget. It's a standstill budget. And I'm really proud of them for doing that. The House did the right thing. They rejected the request for more taxes. They didn't add the spending. And I just want to give a shout out to them. Maybe it took leaving Louisiana to get them to do that. I've been asking them to do that for a long time, and they did it. And boy, I'd be negligent if I didn't thank them for doing it. It was great. But on the health care bill, yeah, the House passed the health care bill yesterday, repealing Obamacare, putting a plan in place to replace it. I want to thank the House members. It took guts. They failed at first. They tried again. They didn't stop. They got no help from the Democrats. They did it. And my hat's off to them. The bill's coming to us in the Senate. A lot of senators have some good ideas. The question will be whether 50 other senators think it's a good idea to pass an amendment. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of amendments proposed. My position hadn't changed, and it won't change. Number one, give me a chance to vote to repeal Obamacare, and I'm going to do it in a heartbeat. Number two, if they put a bill in front of me that's improvement over Obamacare, even though it's not a perfect bill, I'm going to vote for it. We got nowhere to go but up. Obamacare has caused the health insurance costs and premiums for every American, every single American, to go through the roof, and we can do better.
You know, we had a call a little bit early on into the show that said, okay, fine, I'm fine if you want to blame Obamacare, but way before even that happened, the whole industry, premiums were already going up. We were kind of already on a bad trajectory to start with. Now we look at some of the things that the AHCA purports to get rid of, the mandate and a couple other key provisions that Republicans had long been against. However, you don't have a mandate, but there is a somewhat of a penalty if you go without coverage in the middle. Do you think that's going to be something that appears in the Senate version?
Don't know yet. And in terms of your caller, Brandon, the caller's right. Premiums were going up, but Obamacare just threw gasoline on the fire and made them go up even higher. Mm-hmm. Look, here's the problem with the healthcare delivery system in America. It's not the quality of the care. It's the way we're delivering the care. And we don't have enough taxpayer money to give everybody in America gold standard health insurance and give it to them for free. Mm-hmm. Now, if everybody wants to pay 40% more in income taxes, then we can give every American free insurance. But I don't see anybody stepping up to the plate saying, I volunteer to pay 40% more in income taxes. Mm-hmm. So we have to be realistic here. The goal of our healthcare delivery system and the plan has to be to help those who need the most help. And that's just the way it is. Everybody's dancing around the issue, but, we can buy everybody in America a new car if everybody wants to pay a whole lot more in taxes for us to do it.
That's a good point.
I just don't think government is going to solve this problem. I think the private sector and the health insurance companies and the doctors and the hospitals, the private sector is going to have to come up with a solution for the cost of health care in America. Now, government can help them, and I think the bill that's going to pass the Senate, and I believe we will pass something, is going to be a step in that direction.
Wow.
I realize.
It just doesn't make any sense to me when Obamacare is basically government-run health insurance. It failed. So the answer is to add more government? I don't see it.
The issue of taxes, which you brought up, if Americans would want to pay that much more taxes to support something like that, I realize the news cycle moves fast. But last week, this time, we were looking at Trump's potential tax plan. Do your colleagues in the Senate, do you feel like they have kind of a good grasp of what people are wanting and want to see where their taxes go? Bernie and I talk in here often about if you actually had to write a check every quarter of income, for your income taxes, and you had to pay a check 4 times a year, that people would be way more up in arms
in the streets.
about how much they pay.
I think you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the amount of money that the American people pay in taxes, not just federal, but add on top of that state, add on top of that local, property, income, sales, every fee that goes up, it's staggering. Mm-hmm. And the premise behind all that is that government can spend your money better than you can. That's not been my experience in life.
Yeah.
Look, when we finish with health care in the Senate, we're going to tackle tax reform. Now, I'll tell you what tax reform means to me. It means lower taxes and a simpler tax system. And the reason what the American people want, what the people of Louisiana want, is a job, a decent job. They want a chance to work and support themselves and their families and to know the dignity of being able to stand on their own 2 feet. To create those jobs, we're going to have to cut taxes because the capital is there. But small businesses, large businesses, they're not investing in their businesses. They're not building new plants and buying new machinery and new software. They're just sitting on the sidelines with that capital, and until they decide to invest, we're not going to have more jobs, and productivity isn't going to go up, which means wages won't go up.
Gosh.
And the only way to get this country back to normal growth, which is 3+%, right now we're at 1.9,
mm-hmm.
it is to get that capital employed, and we can do that by lowering taxes.
You did remind me.
That's what I'm going to support.
You did remind me of something, in talking about that, with everything you just said, what came to mind to me was competition. Because, competition is what has driven industry and has driven economies all over the world, especially here. The one thing I forgot was on my list I wanted to ask in regards to healthcare. A lot keeps coming about interstate competition where Americans mm-hmm. could pick. Where do you stand on that? I'm
for it. And if there's a health plan being offered in Arizona, for example, that fits my family's needs, I ought to be able to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
You know who opposes doing that? The state insurance commissioners. Because they don't want you to be able to buy an out-of-state policy because they want to protect their turf.
I'd say, yeah.
They say, well, they're not properly regulated by Louisiana. Oh, give me a break. They're regulated by Arizona. They probably got so much regulation they don't know what to do. That's part of the problem. I ought to be able to buy that policy in Arizona or Florida or New Jersey. I mean, if I see a pair of shoes in Florida or New Jersey or Arizona I want to buy, I can buy them. Why can't I buy health insurance?
Yeah,
no, you
kidding,
can't have those shoes, John. You can't have those. You're going to have to. We only sell white rubber
come
boots
on,
here.
Government, the federal government, nanny state, telling us what we can buy and what we can't buy. I'll tell you what else we ought to be able to do. We ought to be able to join together and use our bargaining power to buy health insurance.
Yeah.
If the National Rifle Association wants to send a letter to all its members, if you're interested, join our pool, and we're going to put together 10,000 people and go negotiate lower prices for health care and provide everybody insurance. The NRA ought to be able to do that. Right now, under the law, the NRA can't do that. Or if a group of farmers or a group of radio personalities or a group of doctors themselves, I mean, you ought to be able to have, they're called associated health plans.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that under the law. Why? Because mama federal government, who knows best for all of us, says you can't do it. Why? because we know best. We, the bureaucrats, know best. That's what we need to change.